Dr. Elizabeth Kane was grading papers in her small office at MIT when her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she did not know. She almost ignored it, but something made her pick up. Dr. Kane, this is Colonel Amy Harrison from the United States Air Force. You need to come with us right now. Elizabeth put down her pen. I'm sorry, who is this? Ma'am, we have a situation that needs your expertise. A car is waiting outside your building. Please gather any research materials about alien life and come immediately. Elizabeth looked out her window. A black car sat in the parking lot with two people in dark suits standing beside it. Her heart started beating faster. Is this some kind of joke? No, ma'am. This is real. We need you now. Elizabeth had spent 15 years studying the possibility of life on other planets. She had written papers about how aliens might look and act, but she never thought she would actually meet any. 20 minutes later, she sat in the back seat of the car racing toward a small airport. The driver would not answer her questions. They put her on a military plane with no windows. She tried to stay calm, but her hands shook as she held her research bag. The plane landed after 3 hours. Elizabeth stepped out into bright desert heat. Mountains surrounded a military base that looked like it was built in the middle of nowhere. Signs everywhere said, "Authorized personnel only," and "No photography." A tall woman in military uniform walked toward her. Dr. Kane, I'm Colonel Harrison. Thank you for coming so quickly. Can you please tell me what this is about? Colonel Harrison looked around, then leaned closer. Follow me. You'll understand in a few minutes. They walked into a concrete building with thick walls and no windows. Inside, Elizabeth saw other people she recognized from television and newspapers. Dr. Peter Brooks was there, the famous language expert from Harvard. So was General Marcus Cole, who she had seen on the news talking about space defense. Elizabeth. Dr. Brooks walked over to her. Do you know what's happening? No idea. They just told me to come here. Colonel Harrison stood in front of the group. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to show you is the most important event in human history. 3 hours ago, an unidentified aircraft landed in the desert 5 miles from here. Elizabeth felt her stomach drop. Aircraft? Not from Earth. The room went completely silent. Elizabeth heard her own breathing and the quiet hum of air conditioning. She looked around at the other faces. Everyone looked scared and excited at the same time. We have confirmed contact with beings from another world, Colonel Harrison continued. They approached us peacefully and asked to speak with our leaders and our scientists. That's why you're all here. Dr. Brooks raised his hand. How many of them are there? 3 that we can see. They came in a ship about the size of a small building. It doesn't look like any technology we understand. Elizabeth found her voice. What do they look like? You'll see for yourself in a few minutes, but I should prepare you. They don't look anything like us. Colonel Harrison led them through several more doors and security checks. Each door required special cards and fingerprint scans. Finally, they entered a large room with thick glass windows looking out at the desert. Elizabeth pressed her face to the glass and gasped. A beautiful ship sat in the sand about 100 yards away. It looked like it was made of crystal or glass, but it seemed to glow with its own light. The shape was nothing like human aircraft, more like a giant flower or seashell that had been stretched upward. Look to the right, Colonel Harrison said. 3 figures stood near the ship. They were tall, maybe 8 feet, and thin. Their skin looked almost see-through, like looking through colored water. Each one had 4 arms instead of 2, and their heads were larger than human heads but a different shape. One of them held something in its hands that looked like a small box with lights on it. That's their communication device, Colonel Harrison explained. They speak to us through that machine. It translates their language into English. As Elizabeth watched, one of the aliens, the tallest one, began walking toward the building. The other 2 followed. Elizabeth noticed they moved very smoothly, almost like they were floating just above the ground. They're coming inside? Dr. Brooks asked. Yes. They requested a meeting with our best scientists and military leaders. They said they have important information about Earth's future. Elizabeth's hands were shaking again. Everything she had studied and imagined was about to become real. In just a few minutes, she would be talking to beings from another world. The aliens reached a door at the far end of the room. Colonel Harrison spoke into a radio. "Bring them in." The door opened, and the 3 aliens entered. Up close, Elizabeth could see more details. Their skin really was translucent, and she could see what looked like veins or rivers of light moving underneath. Their eyes were larger than human eyes and seemed to change color slightly as they looked around. The tallest alien stepped forward and held up the translation device. When it spoke, a pleasant female voice came from the machine. "Greetings, people of Earth. I am Ambassador Zara Ka of the Villani people. We represent the Galactic Coordination Council, which governs 47 different species across 12 galaxies." Elizabeth felt dizzy. 47 species, 12 galaxies. Everything humans thought they knew about being alone in the universe was wrong. "We have been watching your world for many years," the voice continued. "We have waited for your species to develop enough wisdom and technology to join the greater community of intelligent life." Dr. Brooks stepped forward. "Why now? Why are you making contact today?" Ambassador Zara Ka's eyes seemed to focus on him. "Because your world is in great danger, and you do not know it. A war is coming to this part of the galaxy. Earth sits directly in the path of 2 great powers who wish to control this region of space." The room was completely quiet again. Elizabeth could hear her heart beating in her ears. "Your species has something very rare and valuable," the alien continued. "You adapt and create new things faster than almost any other intelligent life we have discovered. Most species take thousands of years to develop new technologies. Humans have built amazing things in just a few hundred years." General Cole spoke up. "What does that have to do with this war? The powers who wish to control this space want to use human creativity for their own purposes. One side wants to protect you and help you grow. The other side wants to enslave you and use your abilities to build weapons." Ambassador Zara Ka paused, and Elizabeth noticed the other 2 aliens moving closer. "We can offer you protection and membership in the Galactic Council. But first you must prove that humanity deserves this honor. You have 30 of your Earth days to show us that your species is ready to join the community of worlds." Elizabeth found her voice. "What kind of proof?" "You must pass 3 tests that measure unity, innovation, and sacrifice. No species has ever passed all 3 tests on their first attempt." The ambassador looked directly at Elizabeth. "If you fail, we cannot protect you from what is coming. Your world will face the war alone." The alien's words hung in the air like a challenge. Elizabeth realized that everything was about to change, not just for her, but for every person on Earth. The next 30 days would determine whether humanity survived to see the stars or became slaves to alien masters. The greatest test in human history was about to begin. The next morning, Elizabeth woke up in a small room on the military base. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ambassador Zara Ka's glowing face and heard those words about Earth being in danger. Colonel Harrison knocked on her door at 6 in the morning. "Dr. Kane, we need you in the meeting room. The president is here." Elizabeth quickly got dressed and walked to the main building. Inside, she found more people than the day before. President Catherine Adams sat at a large table with military officers, scientists, and government officials. Everyone looked tired and worried. "Dr. Kane," President Adams stood up. "Thank you for being here. We need to understand these tests," the aliens mentioned. "What do you think they want from us?" Elizabeth sat down next to Dr. Brooks. "From what Ambassador Zara Ka said, they want to see if we can work together as a planet, if we can solve difficult problems, and if we're willing to help others even when it costs us something." General Cole leaned forward. 30 days isn't much time. How are we supposed to get every country on Earth to work together? We can't even agree on trade deals." "We have to try," President Adams said. "The alternative is facing this galactic war alone." A aide walked in and whispered something to the president. She nodded and looked at the group. "The aliens want to meet with us again in 1 hour. They're going to explain the first test." Elizabeth spent the next hour reviewing everything she knew about cooperation between different groups. She thought about how humans had worked together during disasters and wars. Maybe this crisis would bring out the best in people. When they returned to the room with the large windows, Ambassador Zaraka and the other two aliens were waiting. The tall alien held up the translation device. People of Earth, we will now explain your first test. It is called the Test of Unity. Elizabeth noticed that more government officials had arrived. She recognized the faces of leaders from several countries on video screens around the room. Your first test requires every nation on your world to work together on a single project. You have 14 Earth days to complete this task. President Adams stepped forward. What kind of project? You must build a planetary defense system that can protect your world from attack. We will provide you with basic plans and some technology, but your people must build it together. Dr. Brooks raised his hand. All countries, even ones that don't get along? Especially those. Unity means working with people you disagree with for a common goal. Elizabeth felt her stomach twist. Getting all the world's countries to cooperate seemed impossible. There were wars happening right now. Some countries hadn't spoken to each other in decades. Your second test is the test of innovation, Ambassador Zaraka continued. For thousands of years, scientists across the galaxy have tried to solve one problem. They have failed. You must succeed where they could not. What's the problem? Elizabeth asked. How to create unlimited clean energy from the empty space between atoms. If you can solve this, your world will never need to fight over energy resources again. Elizabeth's mind raced. She knew that space wasn't really empty. There was energy there, but nobody on Earth had figured out how to use it safely. Your third test is the test of sacrifice, the alien said. This test will be explained when you are ready for it, but know that it will require you to give up something precious to save others. General Cole stood up. How do we know you're telling the truth? How do we know this isn't some kind of trick? Ambassador Zaraka turned toward him. You do not know. You must decide if you trust us. But consider this. If we wanted to harm your world, why would we warn you about the coming danger? Elizabeth thought that made sense. If the aliens wanted to hurt Earth, they could probably do it without all this talking. We will return tomorrow for your answer, Ambassador Zaraka said. Decide if humanity will take these tests or face the war alone. The aliens left the room, and immediately everyone started talking at once. Elizabeth heard people arguing about whether to trust the aliens, whether the tests were possible, and what would happen if they failed. President Adams held up her hand for quiet. We need to make some decisions fast. Dr. Kane, I want you to lead a team to figure out this energy problem. Dr. Brooks, work with our diplomats to contact every country in the world. General Cole, start planning how we can build this defense system. Over the next few hours, Elizabeth found herself in a room with some of the smartest scientists on Earth. They had laptops, whiteboards, and stacks of research papers. Everyone was trying to understand how to get energy from empty space. It's never been done, said Dr. Danny Martinez, a young physicist from California. People have tried for 50 years. Maybe that's the point, said Lisa Chen, a computer programmer, who had been brought in to help. Maybe humans think about problems differently than other species. Elizabeth looked at the basic plans the aliens had left for the defense system. The technology was far beyond anything humans had built, but she could see how it might work. The problem was that it required materials and factories from all over the world. Meanwhile, President Adams was on video calls with world leaders. Elizabeth could hear shouting in different languages from the next room. Some countries wanted to cooperate. Others thought it was all a trick by the United States government. By evening, Elizabeth was exhausted. She walked outside and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien armies were probably getting ready for war. Earth had just a few weeks to prepare for something bigger than anything in human history. Dr. Brooks found her looking at the sky. How's the energy research going? Slowly. What about getting countries to work together? Also, slowly. The president has convinced about half the world leaders to participate. The others want more proof that the aliens are real. Elizabeth sighed. We need something to bring everyone together fast. Maybe we do, Dr. Brooks said. He pointed at the alien ship in the distance, still glowing softly in the dark. Tomorrow the aliens said they would take some of our leaders up to their ship. If we can broadcast that on television, show the whole world what we're dealing with, maybe that will convince everyone. Elizabeth nodded. It might work. People need to see this is real. The next morning, Ambassador Zaraka agreed to take President Adams and 2 other world leaders onto the alien ship. Television cameras broadcasted the event live around the world. Elizabeth watched with millions of other people as the president walked up a ramp of light into the crystal ship. For 30 minutes, the cameras showed the ship from outside. Then, the ramp appeared again and President Adams walked down with an expression of wonder on her face. My fellow citizens of Earth, President Adams said to the cameras, I have seen things that prove we are not alone in the universe. I have seen the beauty and technology of our galactic neighbors, but I have also seen images of the war fleets that are coming toward our part of space. She held up a small device the aliens had given her. This contains proof of what we face. Every leader of every nation needs to see this. We have 2 choices: work together to protect our world, or watch our planet become a battlefield for powers we cannot imagine. The broadcast changed everything. Within hours, countries that had been refusing to cooperate were calling to join the defense project. Elizabeth watched the news as factory workers in China, engineers in Germany, and scientists in Brazil all began working on different parts of the alien defense system. For the first time since the aliens arrived, Elizabeth began to think humanity might actually pass the first test. The question was whether they could solve the other 2 problems before time ran out. She looked at her research notes about getting energy from empty space. Somewhere in these equations was the answer that had escaped every other species in the galaxy. Elizabeth hoped that human stubbornness and creativity would be enough to find it. The real test of humanity was just beginning. 8 days had passed since the world leaders agreed to work together. Elizabeth barely left the laboratory anymore. She and her team worked 18 hours a day trying to solve the energy problem that had stumped alien scientists for thousands of years. Try running the equations again, Elizabeth told Danny Martinez. But this time don't assume the energy has to be collected slowly. Danny looked tired. Dark circles surrounded his eyes. What do you mean? Every approach we've tried assumes we need to carefully extract tiny amounts of energy. What if we're thinking about this wrong? What if humans are supposed to think bigger? Lisa, Chen looked up from her computer. You mean like grabbing large amounts of energy all at once? Exactly. Other species might be too careful. Maybe being a little reckless is what makes humans different. While Elizabeth's team worked on the energy problem, the rest of the world was busy with the defense system. She could see the progress on television news. Factories in 20 different countries were building parts of massive shields that would protect Earth from space attacks. The most amazing thing was watching old enemies work together. Russian engineers were teaching American workers how to build special metal alloys. Chinese scientists were sharing research with Japanese laboratories. Countries that had been fighting for years were now sending their best people to help each other. Colonel Harrison visited the laboratory every day to check on their progress. How are we doing, Dr. Kane? We're getting closer. I think we're on the right track, but we need more time. Time is the one thing we don't have much of. The alien said the defense system needs to be finished in 6 more days. Elizabeth nodded. She knew the pressure everyone was under, but she also knew that rushing the energy research could be dangerous. They were dealing with forces that could destroy the entire planet if something went wrong. That evening, Ambassador Zaraka visited the base again. Elizabeth was surprised when the alien asked to speak with her alone. Dr. Kane, may I observe your research? Elizabeth led the alien into the laboratory. Ambassador Zaraka looked at the equations on the whiteboards and the experimental equipment. Her large eyes seemed to change color as she examined everything. Your approach is very different from other species, the alien said through her translation. Device, different how? Most species try to control every variable to make everything perfectly safe before attempting anything new. But I see that humans are willing to take calculated risks. Elizabeth felt encouraged. Is that good or bad? It is why we believe your species has potential. But be careful. The energy you are trying to harness is more powerful than your nuclear weapons. After Ambassador Zara Kah left, Elizabeth gathered her team. We need to try something completely new. What if we don't try to control the energy at all? What if we just give it away to flow naturally? Danny frowned. That sounds dangerous. Everything we're doing is dangerous. But think about it. Water flows downhill naturally. Electricity flows from high voltage to low voltage naturally. Maybe this energy wants to flow too, and we just need to give it the right path. They worked all night building a new type of collector. Instead of trying to force energy out of empty space, they created a device that would let the energy flow if it wanted to. At sunrise, they were ready for their first test. Remember, if this works, we'll only run it for a few seconds, Elizabeth said. We don't know how much energy might come out. Lisa started the computer program that would control the test. Danny checked all the safety systems. Elizabeth held her breath and pressed the activation button. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the laboratory filled with a soft blue light. The energy collectors showed readings higher than anything they had ever seen. It's working, Danny shouted. We're getting more energy in 3 seconds than a power plant produces in a day. Elizabeth quickly shut off the system. The light faded, but the readings on their instruments showed they had captured enough energy to power a small city for a week. We did it, Lisa whispered. We actually did it. Elizabeth felt a mix of excitement and fear. They had solved a problem that alien scientists couldn't solve for thousands of years, but now they needed to make sure the technology was safe enough to use. Over the next 2 days, they ran more tests. Each time, the energy flowed easily into their collectors. Elizabeth began to understand why other species had failed. They were probably too afraid to let the energy flow freely. Humans were just reckless enough to try something that seemed dangerous. Meanwhile, the planetary defense system was almost complete. Elizabeth watched news reports showing the final pieces being installed. Giant shield generators were positioned all around Earth. They would create an energy barrier that could stop most weapons from reaching the planet's surface. But there was still one more test to face. On the morning of day 13, Ambassador Zara Kah returned with news about the test of sacrifice. President Adams, Colonel Harrison, Elizabeth, and the other team leaders gathered to hear what the alien had to say. Your species has done well. With the first 2 tests, Ambassador Zara Kah said, you have shown unity by working together across all your nations. You have shown innovation by solving the energy problem that defeated many other species. Elizabeth felt proud but also nervous. She knew the hardest test was coming. Now you face the test of sacrifice. There is a colony of beings called the Cathari on a planet far from here. They are the last survivors of their species. Their world is dying, and they will all be dead within days, if no one helps them. The alien paused, and Elizabeth could feel the tension in the room. To save them, you must send your best spacecraft and risk the lives of your people. The journey is dangerous and you might not succeed. But if you do nothing, an entire species will become extinct. General Cole spoke up. How far away are they? Far enough that your people will be gone for several weeks. And while they are away, your world will be less protected if the war fleets arrive early. Elizabeth realized the terrible choice they were facing. They could keep all their resources on Earth to protect themselves, or they could risk everything to save strangers they had never met. President Adams looked around the room. How long do we have to decide? You must decide now. The Cathari colony will be dead by tomorrow if help does not come today. The room was completely silent. Elizabeth thought about what it meant to be human. Throughout history, humans had risked their lives to save others. Firefighters ran into burning buildings. Soldiers fought to protect people they didn't know. Doctors traveled to dangerous places to help the sick. I'll go, said a voice from the back of the room. Elizabeth turned to see Captain Jack Roberts, one of the test pilots who had been working with the alien technology. I've been training on the new spacecraft. I can lead a rescue mission. It's too dangerous, Colonel Harrison said. We need, you hear? No, President Adams said slowly. Captain Roberts is right. This is what the test is really about. It's not just about being willing to sacrifice. It's about doing what's right even when it's hard. She looked at Ambassador Zaraka. We'll save the Kithari colony, that's what humans do. The alien's eyes seemed to glow brighter. Then prepare your spacecraft. Time is running short, and you have much work to do. As everyone rushed to prepare for the rescue mission, Elizabeth realized that humanity was about to face its greatest challenge yet. They had proven they could work together and solve impossible problems. Now they had to prove they were willing to risk everything to save others. The next few hours would determine not just whether humanity passed the alien tests, but what kind of species they would become as members of the galactic community. Elizabeth hoped they would make the right choice. Captain Jack Roberts stood in front of the new spacecraft that would take him to the dying alien colony. The ship looked like a mix of human and alien technology. It was sleek and silver, with Earth's flag painted on one side and strange alien symbols on the other. Are you sure about this, Jack? Colonel Harrison asked. We don't know what's out there. I'm sure, Jack replied. This is what we have to do. Elizabeth watched the final preparations from the control room. Jack's crew included navigator Sarah Williams and engineer Tony Garcia. They were some of the best people Earth had, and they were about to fly farther from home than any human had ever gone. Phoenix, this is Control. Colonel Harrison spoke into his radio. You are cleared for launch. Elizabeth held her breath as the spacecraft lifted off. It moved smoothly into the sky, faster than any human-built rocket. In seconds, it was just a bright dot against the blue sky. Then it was gone. How long until they reached the colony? President Adams asked. Ambassador Zaraka checked a device that looked like a crystal tablet. If everything goes well, they will arrive in 4 days. But the journey through deep space is dangerous. There are asteroid fields and energy storms that could destroy their ship. Elizabeth felt worried for Jack and his crew, but she also felt proud. Humanity was risking its best people to save strangers. That had to mean something to the aliens who were judging them. But while the Phoenix flew toward the distant colony, other problems were developing closer to home. Long-range sensors were picking up strange signals from the edge of the solar system. What are we seeing? General Cole asked the technician monitoring the sensors. Multiple large objects moving toward us. They're still very far away, but they're definitely artificial. And they're big. Elizabeth felt her stomach drop. How big? Each one is about the size of a city. Ambassador Zaraka looked at the sensor readings. Her skin seemed to glow brighter, which Elizabeth had learned meant the alien was worried. The war fleets have arrived sooner than we expected, Ambassador Zaraka said. They are still weeks away from Earth, but they are coming. President Adams stood up. Are our defenses ready? The shield generators are in place, but they have not been fully tested, and your rescue ship is too far away to return quickly. Elizabeth realized the terrible situation they were in. Earth's defenses were untested. Their best pilot was days away on a rescue mission, and enemy fleets were approaching. Everything depended on whether humanity had made the right choices. Over the next 2 days, more ships appeared on the sensors. Elizabeth watched the numbers grow with growing fear. Dozens of alien warships were heading toward Earth. But then something unexpected happened. Other ships began appearing between the enemy fleets and Earth. These ships looked different, more like Ambassador Zaraka's crystal vessel. Those are Galactic Council ships, Ambassador Zaraka explained. Word of your test results has spread throughout the galaxy. Many species want to see if humanity will succeed. Are they here to help us? Colonel Harrison asked. Some are. Your willingness to risk everything for the Kithari colony has impressed many council members. They remember when other species helped them in their early days. Elizabeth felt a spark of hope. Maybe humanity wouldn't face the war alone after all. On the 4th day, they received a message from Captain Roberts. His voice came through the radio with static and delay from the vast distance. Control, this is Phoenix. We have reached the Kithari colony. The situation here is worse than we thought. What do you see, Jack? Colonel Harrison asked. Their planet is breaking apart. Huge. Earthquakes and volcanic eruptions everywhere. We found the survivors in an underground shelter, but there are more of them than our ship can carry. Elizabeth heard the stress in Jack's voice. The rescue was supposed to be difficult but not impossible. How many survivors? President Adams asked. About 200. We can only take 50 at a time. We'll need to make 4 trips. Ambassador Zaraka spoke into the radio. Captain Roberts, you do not have time for 4 trips. The enemy fleets will reach Earth before you could return with all the survivors. There was silence on the radio for a long moment. Then Jack's voice came back, clearer and more determined. Then we'll have to find another way. Tony thinks he can modify our cargo bay to hold more people. It'll be dangerous and uncomfortable, but we might be able to take everyone in 2 trips. Jack, that's too risky, Colonel Harrison said. Your ship wasn't designed for that many passengers. Neither were the boats that carried refugees across oceans, but people made it work. We're not leaving anyone behind. Elizabeth smiled despite her worry. This was exactly the kind of stubborn human determination that made their species special. Over the next several hours, they listened to updates from the Phoenix. Jack and his crew worked around the clock to modify their ship. The Cathari survivors helped as much as they could, even though they were weak from their dying world. Finally, Jack reported that they were ready to load the first group of survivors. But just as they were preparing to leave, their sensors detected something alarming. Control, we have a problem. There are unknown ships approaching the colony. They don't look friendly. Elizabeth felt her heart racing. How many ships? 3 large vessels. They're moving fast and heading straight for us. Ambassador Zaraka checked her devices. Those are Dominion scout ships. They must have detected your rescue mission. Can the Phoenix outrun them? General Cole asked. Not while carrying so many passengers, Ambassador Zaraka replied. Elizabeth listened as Jack discussed options with his crew. They could try to run and hope their human-made engines were fast enough. They could try to hide and hope the enemy ships didn't find them. Or they could try to fight 3 ships much larger than their own. What are your orders? Jack asked over the radio. President. Adams looked around the room at all the worried faces. Elizabeth could see the president weighing all the terrible options. Save some of the Cathari and run, hoping to escape. Try to save everyone and risk losing the rescue ship completely. Or give up the rescue mission to keep Earth's best pilot safe. Jack, President Adams said finally. You know what the right thing to do is. We trust your judgment. Another long silence. Then Jack's voice came back, calm and determined. We're taking everyone. If we have to fight our way out, then that's what we'll do. These people have already lost their world. We're not going to let them lose their lives too. Elizabeth felt tears in her eyes. This was humanity at its best, refusing to abandon others even when facing impossible odds. Phoenix, you are not alone, came a new voice over the radio. This is Council Fleet Commander Thekvar. We have ships in your area. We are coming to assist. Ambassador Zaraka's skin glowed brighter. The Council has decided. Your species has proven worthy of protection. On the screens, Elizabeth watched as alien ships moved to intercept the Dominion scouts. The battle was about to begin, but humanity would not face it alone. The rescue mission had become something larger, the first test of the new alliance between Earth and the galactic community. Everything that happened next would determine the future of both humanity and the galaxy itself. Elizabeth watched the screens as bright flashes of light appeared in the distance around the Cathari colony. The battle between Galactic Council ships and Dominion scouts had begun. Each flash meant weapons firing and ships fighting far from Earth. Phoenix, report your status, Colonel Harrison called into the radio. Jack's voice came back through heavy static. We've loaded all the survivors. The ship is packed, but everyone is aboard. The Council ships are keeping the enemy busy, but we need to leave now. Get out of there, Jack, President Adams said. Come home. Elizabeth held her breath as she watched the tiny dot that represented the Phoenix moving away from the battle. The ship was carrying 200 alien refugees and flying back toward Earth as fast as it could go. But while Captain Roberts was racing back through space, the main enemy fleet was getting closer to Earth. The sensors showed dozens of massive warships approaching the solar system. "How much time do we have?" General Cole asked. Ambassador Zaraka checked her crystal device. "The Dominion fleet will arrive in 6 days, but Captain Roberts will not return for 8 days. Your world will face the first attack without your rescue ship." Elizabeth felt the weight of that decision. By choosing to save the Cathari colony, Earth had given up some of its best defenders for the coming battle. But looking around the room, she could see that no one regretted the choice. Over the next few days, Earth prepared for war like never before. The planetary defense shields were tested and activated. Military bases around the world went on high alert. But most importantly, other species began arriving to help. Ships from 12 different Galactic Council worlds took positions around Earth. Elizabeth watched in amazement as vessels of all shapes and sizes formed a protective ring around the planet. Some looked like crystal flowers, others like metal insects, and a few looked like nothing she could describe. "Why are they helping us?" Elizabeth asked Ambassador Zaraka. "Because your species did something remarkable. You passed all 3 tests on your first attempt. In 4,000 years of Council history, only 2 other species have done this." "What happened to those other species?" "They became the greatest defenders of peace and freedom in the galaxy. We believe humans will do the same." Elizabeth felt proud, but also scared. Living up to such expectations would not be easy. On the 6th day, the Dominion fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system. Elizabeth could see them on the long-range screens, huge, dark ships that looked like weapons designed to destroy worlds. The enemy commander sent a message to Earth. His face appeared on the main screen, and Elizabeth shivered at what she saw. The Dominion warlord looked like a mixture of reptile and machine, with metal parts replacing much of his natural body. "I am Warlord Kraz Thul," the creature said in a harsh voice. "Surrender now, and your species will be allowed to serve the Dominion. Resist and your world will be destroyed." President Adams stepped forward to answer. "This is President Adams of Earth. We reject your demands. Humanity stands with the Galactic Council." The warlord's mechanical eyes glowed red. "Then you have chosen death." The communication ended, and within hours, the battle began. Elizabeth watched from the command center as the most important fight in human history started. The Dominion ships moved toward Earth in a massive formation, while Council ships and Earth's defense systems prepared to meet them. The first exchange of weapons fire lit up space like a deadly fireworks show. Beams of energy and streams of projectiles flew between the opposing fleets. Elizabeth saw several Council ships take damage, but they held their formation. "Earth defense systems, activate," General Cole ordered. Around the planet, the shield generators that had been built by workers from every nation hummed to life. A shimmering barrier appeared in space, surrounding Earth like a soap bubble made of energy. The Dominion fleet fired their most powerful weapons at the shield. Elizabeth watched the barrier flicker and bend, but it held. Shield strength at 80%, a technician reported. "It's working, but it won't hold forever." The battle raged for hours. Elizabeth saw ships on both sides destroyed in flashes of light. The Council forces were brave and skilled, but the Dominion fleet was larger and more powerful. Then something unexpected happened. Dr. Danny Martinez ran into the command center with excitement on his face. "Elizabeth, the energy collectors we built. They're picking up power from the battle. All that weapons fire is creating energy we can harvest." Elizabeth's eyes widened. "Can we use it to strengthen the shields?" "Better than that. We can use it to power weapons of our own." Within an hour, Earth's scientists had connected the energy collectors to a system of powerful beam weapons. As the battle continued, Earth began fighting back with its own technology. The first Earth beam weapon fired and struck a Dominion ship directly. The enemy vessel exploded in a brilliant flash. Cheers erupted in the command center. "This is Admiral Patricia Stone," came a voice over the radio. "All Earth defense stations, you are cleared to engage. Elizabeth watched as beams of pure energy shot out from Earth toward the enemy fleet. The weapons were powered by the same energy from space technology that had solved the second test. Human ingenuity was turning the tide of battle, but the fighting was far from over. Warlord Krasthul's flagship pushed through the defensive lines, heading straight for Earth. The massive ship was larger than anything else in the battle, and its weapons were destroying everything in its path. "He's trying to break through the shield directly," Colonel Harrison said. Just then, a familiar voice came over the radio. "Earth Control, this is Phoenix. We're back, and we brought friends." Elizabeth looked at the screens and saw Captain Roberts' ship approaching from the opposite direction. But he wasn't alone. Flying with him were dozens of ships from the Kithari survivors and other species who had joined the fight. "Jack, stay back," General Cole ordered. "Your ship isn't built for combat." "Maybe not," Jack replied. "But these Kithari ships are, and they know something about that Dominion flagship that we don't." An old alien voice came over the radio, speaking through a translation device. "This is Elder Kethrum of the Kethari. Warlord Krasthul destroyed our original homeworld centuries ago. We know his ship's weakness." The Kethari vessels moved in a complex pattern around the Dominion flagship. Elizabeth watched as they targeted specific points on the enemy ship, with precise strikes. Suddenly, the massive vessel began to lose power. "His ship's energy core is unshielded on the underside," Elder Kethrum explained. "He never expected anyone to attack from below." Captain Roberts and several council ships dove under the flagship and fired all their weapons at the weak point. The Dominion command ship exploded in a blast so bright that Elizabeth had to look away from the screens. With their leader destroyed, the remaining Dominion ships retreated. The battle was over, and Earth had won. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. Earth became a full member of the Galactic Council. Humans began working alongside aliens in laboratories, on spaceships, and in colonies throughout the galaxy. Elizabeth found herself appointed as Earth's chief science advisor to the Council. She worked with researchers from dozens of different species, sharing human knowledge and learning from alien wisdom. The Kithari survivors built a new home on one of Earth's moons, becoming humanity's first alien neighbors. Captain Roberts became famous throughout the galaxy as the human who risked everything to save strangers. But the most important change was harder to see. Humanity had proven that a young species could stand up to ancient evils. Other worlds that had been afraid to resist the Dominion began to fight back. The galaxy became a more hopeful place. 6 months after first contact, Elizabeth stood in her new office on an orbital station above Earth. Through the windows, she could see ships from 100 different worlds coming and going. Children from multiple species played together in the station's parks. Ambassador Zarakov visited her often. "Your species has exceeded our highest expectations," the alien said during one visit. "We had good teachers," Elizabeth replied. "No, you had something more important. You had the courage to do what was right, even when it was dangerous." Elizabeth looked out at the stars, no longer mysterious and empty, but filled with friends and possibilities. The aliens had arrived and changed everything, but the most important change was in humanity itself. Humans had learned they were part of something much larger than their small blue planet. And in learning to protect others, they had found their true place in the galaxy. The greatest adventure in human history was just beginning.